Greetings and welcome back to Room 303, AP English, the 1010 course, and we now are in lecture number 4 of the St. Martin's Guide to Writing. We are actually in chapter 4, explaining a concept. Now the first thing I want you to write down is that this kind of writing is what we traditionally have called expository writing or exposition, okay? Now think about that word, expository, to expose, explaining a concept. This is really the first truly academic writing that we will engage in, and we want to talk about how specifically you'll go about doing this type of writing. Think of this though. Technically, what you've been reading for the last 100 pages in St. Martin's Guide is itself a chief example of explaining a concept. Hey, we want you to write this essay about an event that you'll remember from your life. Let us explain to you how to do that. That's exactly what you've been looking at for the last 100 pages of this volume, okay? Go to page 107. In this chapter, just to read as we've done in our previous lectures, in this chapter we ask you to analyze and explain a concept you know from school, work, sports, or some other area of interest. From reading and analyzing the selections in the guide to reading, you can see how others make their explanations clear, interesting, and informative. The guide to writing will show you ways to use the basic features of the genre to make your explanation not only understandable but compelling for your readers. As we get ready to look at our models, we're going to have 4 of them again. Rosa Alexander is going to talk about the evolution of the trigger warning meme as a reflection of today's cultural division. We're going to have Tofix's analyzing of a biochemical basis of love. We're going to have Lindsay Grace's explanation of the persuasive power of play. And then finally, Susan Cain's going to examine the evolutionary advantages of shyness and introversion. Now, let's make sure we understand that as we go through this process, we're not expressing harsh opinions in an arguable thesis, as we will later call it. This is not a piece of persuasive writing. Rather, we are seeking to inform in some ways and explain a concept. To do that, starting on page 109, there's several things we have to be paying attention to. My assumption is that you'll read in detail and study this more closely using the text. First of all, you got to have a focused explanation, right? And then you got to have this clear, logical organization. If you're going to explain, think about your textbook, classic example, right? If you're going to explain a concept, it's got to be clear and organized as you deliver the information. On to page 110, you have to have appropriate exploratory strategies, definition, comparison, contrast, cause and effect, obviously the use of exemplars, and classification, just to name a few of the examples. On page 111, the integration of sources here needs to be smooth. Now, for the very first time, for many of you in this course, you will begin to utilize what we will refer to as validation, external validation, research. In other words, there's information you're trying to present, and you're going to use other outside sources to help you do that. So you're going to be paying attention to the models and the reading to see kind of how they do that. Starting on page 111, we'll work all the way through page 133 with the models, culminating on page 134. So let's go there now. The writing assessment again on page 134. Explain an important and interesting concept, one you already know well or are just learning about. Consider what your readers are likely to know and think about the concept, what they're likely to find interesting about the topic, what you might want them to learn about it, whether you can research it sufficiently in the time that you have. That last one is huge. You may want to go into some tremendous detail on a very esoteric concept, but you just do not have enough time to be able to get that done. Now, 2 observations for your notes. 1, no arguable thesis writing here. You're just simply going to tell us some information about a concept. You're not going to tell us whether that concept is a positive one or a negative one. We'll get to persuasive and arguable thesis writing later. Number 2, I want you to take a look at this flowchart starting on 134, 135 and following. This is a useful chart, and I really want you to pay attention to make sure that you're involving all of those. Focused explanation at the beginning with a clear thesis, a clear logical organization in the form of paragraphing, appropriate explanatory strategies with some integration that's smooth integration of sources. Your textbook will literally walk you through all of those. I just want to concentrate for a few seconds, though, on page 139 and your working thesis. Make sure your thesis is clear and articulate, an opening that engages the reader, a thesis statement that announces the concept and its focus, and possibly forecasts the main subtopics. Okay? And then obviously your points of validation will then be the information about concept organized by subtopic. Page 140, hypercritical. You have to make sure that you are utilizing a really good outline in the writing of this kind of paper. As we've said in earlier lectures, we want to make sure that our academic writing is very clear, coherent, concise. You'll maybe go back to the word picture where I'm on my whiteboard, and sometimes students will say, oh yeah, I want to say this, oh yeah, I need to say this, oh yeah, I need to say this, oh yeah, there's this other thing, oh yeah. As opposed to, I'm going to say this, then I'm going to say this, and this. That's very important when you're writing now for the expository essay. All right? Finally, you want to make sure that you are properly proofreading your work. Okay? This is very significant, especially as it relates to the uses of sources. And we want to be sure that you are proofreading each other's stuff closely, okay? So starting now, you want to make sure that you're sharing your information with outside readers so that people can have some positive comments, feedback before you finally submit to me. Well, here you go. We're into it, guys. We're into it. This is true academic writing. We'll begin with explaining a concept, the expository essay. I wish you the best of luck. Let's go to work, guys. Thank you.